Today I'm joined by Keith Belk. Keith was one of the researchers in the National Beef Quality Audit. The 2001 Quality Audit was released at the National Cattlemen Summer Meetings here in Denver. And Keith's going to tell us a little bit about the phase of the audit that he worked on. But first of all, Dr. Belk, tell us about your role at Colorado State.
Excellent. I'm a professor of animal science at Colorado State University. And Colorado State University, since the original National Beef Quality Audit was conducted in 1991, and then every 5 years since, has been responsible for conducting the phase one of the audit, which is the face-to-face interviews of participants, companies that participate at all sectors of the industry across the marketing chain.
So, for example, what might be some of the marketing sector companies in general that you worked with?
So in phase one, we're interested in identifying things that that production sectors of the industry are either doing well or that we need to improve on. And so we interview from that perspective feeders, packing companies. We interview food service and distribution or further processing companies. And then we interview retailers. And then finally, we interview those that aren't actually in a production role, but they're affiliated with the industry, and that's government representatives and allied industry.
So as you gathered that data from these market sectors, what were some of the key findings that you had that you were able to report today?
Well, we added for the first time, some interesting experimental concepts to the phase one. The evolution of technology allowed us to do some things that we hadn't previously been able to do. And so the first thing that we did is we divided quality attributes into 7 categories, we called them. The first of those was food safety. The second was eating satisfaction. The third was how and where the cattle were raised. The fourth was lean, fat, and bone, and what that was referring to as compositional things. The fourth was weight and size. I'm sorry, not the fourth. The fifth was weight and size. The next one was, I've lost track now, genetics, and then visual characteristics.
And so from the primary 7 attributes, you also talked about some overall strengths and weaknesses that you found in regards to beef products in the beef industry. What were some of the strengths that really came out of your database for the beef industry?
Well, firstly, one of the things that we do is we evaluate, we ask a question that's just what are the strengths of the industry, what are the weaknesses of the industry, what are the threats to the industry. It's sort of a SWOT analysis. And we learned that several things pop up on all of those lists. So food safety, for example. People think we've done a really good job over the past 15 or 20 years improving the safety of beef, unquestionably, but it's not something that we can sit on our laurels on and forget about. We have to continue and focus effort towards continually improving food safety. The same was true for eating satisfaction, a huge demand driver for the beef industry, and so we need to continue efforts towards improving and addressing concerns associated with eating satisfaction. Other attributes of interest that popped up for the first time when we did an economic experiment, which was one of the new things that we were able to do with this phase one. We learned that all sectors of the industry across the board want to have more information attached to the cattle that they're purchasing or the product that they're purchasing. So the information that's attached to what they're buying may differ depending on the market sector in terms of what they want. But nonetheless, all sectors of the industry want more information attached to whatever we're selling. So for the feedlot industry, that might be things like how were the cattle raised, where were they calved, what sorts of health management systems have they been exposed to. To retailers and distributors, they might be more concerned with what sort of animal well-being practices were used to raise these animals, sort of the social issues that are closer to the consumer. But nonetheless, at all points of the industry, they want more information about the products that they're buying, and that showed up in a big way across all of the marketing sectors.
So as a cow-calf producer across the country, having that information and being able to share it through the marketing chain will be beneficial because they are asking for it as down the chain?
We believe so. We believe that there's a return on investment. Interestingly enough, it's almost one of the attributes that some that purchased must have before they'll make the purchasing decision. So it's that important. About a quarter of the transactions that occur based on our data require some information to be attached to whatever is being transacted. And then in addition to that, there was a pretty strong willingness to pay more for that sort of information. And there's evidence in the industry already that this exists. For those that can verify source and age, there's an opportunity to add value to fed cattle because then they qualify for several of the export programs. And so those sorts of things are already beginning to evolve, but I think we're going to see much more of it as we move forward.
So any closing comments on the phase that you overseen in the National Beef Quality Audit that would be kind of some take-home messages?
Well, there's one more thing that came out that was really, really important in phase one, we believe. When we asked industry participants about what the weaknesses were for the industry, almost unanimously they told us that we're not doing a good job either being transparent with what we produce or telling our story to the general public. And so going forward, we think it's going to be hugely important, firstly, to be more transparent about how and what we do, and then secondly, going out and proactively, aggressively telling our story to the rest of humankind.
Great. Well, that sounds like, as usual, the 2011 National Beef Quality Audit has provided us with a lot of benchmark information, as the previous ones did, and good take-home messages for producers to think about in the industry in general. So thank you very much, Dr. Belk, for your contribution towards the helping gather this data and being one of the researchers on it, and appreciate your role as well.